The book is a high-adventure thriller set in northeastern Kenya on the savannah. It tells the story of Jon Turk, a tracker tracking lions armed with a wooden club, of Jon Turk, the tracked, being tracked by men with AK-47s. It looks into the origins of our strength and our weaknesses as a human species.
Hi folks, my name is Chris and I'm the artist and co-founder at Explorer Maps.
Hi, this is Vanessa, Chris's wife. I have been a #1 fan of Chris's art since I first met him in the late 1990s. Which map will you get to help you treasure your own special times? Please be sure to use the promo code Mandela for a discount when you visit explorermaps.com.
Welcome to the Trail Less Traveled. Missoula is a mecca for outdoor enthusiasts, and each week we will bring you tales of adventures both near and far, as well as adventure information and inspiration, and a few tunes to set the mood. You can subscribe to the podcast and read more about this week's show online at traillesstraveled.net. And now here's your host, Mandela.
Today we're recording the Trail Less Traveled in the forest up a valley in northwestern Montana. Surrounded by ponderosa pine, the larch are just now starting to change color. So scattered throughout the forest, we are starting to see the hint of a golden glow. And I just took a walk up the hill and there's a lot of fresh bear scat on the ground. But I'm honored to be sitting right now with Jon Turk. And Jon has been telling stories on this program and around the world for a very long time. This is, I think, the 5th time that I've interviewed you, Jon, right?
Hey, how about that? You know, my memory isn't that good, but it's been a long time and we've gotten to know each other and become friends, and this is just glorious to be here. I've been in a lot of recording studios, but nothing even ever close to this.
Well, without giving away the location, where are you sitting right now?
Well, we have Mandela's home, which is a African Land Rover thing you would expect to see on the savannah, which is wonderful because we're going to talk about being on the savannah today. We've got a grassland, a little hill above us, and a little kind of swamp down there with some cattails. Of course, it's fall. They've gone to seed. Fond memories of cattails. When I was a kid, we used to collect them and do all kinds of things with them. They were very fond. And a game trail here. You'd almost expect to see elk walking up through the forest into the pines and firs and stuff. A tamarack over there. It's a really wonderful, wonderful place to be. The sky is opening up. It's an October day, and here we are. Let's get going.
Well, Jon, I'm going to jump right in. You mentioned a moment ago your childhood. So my first question for you is, where did you grow up, and how was adventure a part of your childhood?
I grew up on Wooden Lake in Connecticut. I've gone back there now. To me, it's kind of, I think of it as Winnie the Pooh's 40-acre wood. When I was a kid, it was very big. Now I live on the edge of the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness, which is the largest wilderness in the contiguous United States. And when I go back home, it doesn't seem quite as big as it seemed when I was a kid. But we have different lakes, a series of lakes and swamps and rocks. And we had a fort up there in the rocks. We just thought that if the gang from the Worcester Heights gang ever came down to attack the soft belly of the Terrorwile Lake gang, that we would hold our last stand up in those forts. But of course, when hockey season came, then of course they were just the opposing hockey team. They weren't the fearsome Worcester Heights gang. But we had a fort up there in the rocks. And yeah, I spent my whole youth in those lakes and woods and stuff like that. And that was the beginning.
Now, Jon, you have written multiple books, and I want to jump right into your most recent project, a book that just came out.
Just came out last week. Tracking Lions, Myth, and Wilderness in Samburu. I say in the preface, it's a book I always wanted to write from the beginning, 50 years ago when I started writing. But there were multiple themes that started the book. One was, as an environmental writer for years, I talked about the various types of solutions to our social problems. So there's technical pollution solutions and there's social solutions. So a technical solution would be to build an electric car. A social solution would be to carpool. But there was something missing in that. That wasn't enough. And I had a coffee with Paul Ehrlich, the author of The Population Bomb and lifelong environmentalist, population biologist at Stanford. And in the course of that conversation, we talked about what's missing here. And he said, a consciousness revolution. It's not just a social change like, I'm going to be a good environmentalist, so I'm going to carpool, even though it's inconvenient. See, that isn't enough. That doesn't work. We need a consciousness revolution. So that's been in the back of my head for a long time, consciousness revolution. The other thing that was in the back of my head was I was doing some anthropological reading. And when I was in fourth grade, Miss Maroney, my fourth grade teacher, told me, she asked the class, what gave the human beings the power to rise to such dominance over the planet? And somebody raised their hand and said, well, we had big brains. And she said, no, that wasn't enough. And somebody says, oh, we stood upright and somehow that gave her hands free. No. She said it was our counter-opposing thumb and that we were able to hold tools. And tools was what made us powerful, what made us human. And even in fourth grade, something bugged me about that we're more than a tool-using species, that there was something missing. And then as a grown-up, I started digging into it like 50 years later after it started bugging me. And I found out if you go deep into the anthropological record, what you find is that tools did not come first. What came first? Art, music, dance. And this myth, this story that tools were a tool-using species and technology liberated us so we'd have the free time to be frivolous and to tell stories and dance and draw pictures. That is not correct. It's that our power came from art. Our power came from music and dance and togetherness. And then, once we had the power, then as an afterthought, we invented tools. And I gave a TEDx talk about that a number of years ago. And then I said, now I got to put all this together. And then I was in Africa, in northeastern Kenya, on the desert savannah near the Ethiopian border. And I had an adventure, and then everything fell together. I had a narrative, I had an idea, I had anthropology, and that was the current book, Tracking Lions, Myth, and Wilderness in Samburu.
Tracking Lions, Myths, and Wilderness in Samburu, a book by Jon Turk that just most recently came out. And I want to come back to the book, but I feel like you mentioned that this is a book that you always wanted to write, and I'm really excited to read it. But I was also wondering if we could just maybe take a step back in time again for someone listening who maybe didn't catch the other 5 episodes that you and I have already recorded. So can you tell us about some of the adventures that took you to where you found yourself when you were writing this book?
Yeah, well, I started adventuring a little bit late in life. I went to school and I got a PhD in organic chemistry and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't break out of that academia scene until I was 27 or 28. My first big adventure was to attempt, and I say attempt, to solo kayak around Cape Horn, the tempestuous piece of ocean on the southern tip of South America. And that ended in a massive failure. I broke up in the surf. The boat broke up in the surf. I got washed in. Boat hit a rock, broke in two. I'm in the Antarctic Ocean on a sparsely inhabited island, dislocated my shoulder. I'm swimming with one hand and so on and so forth. Big mess. And I wrote a book called Cold Oceans about my early failures. My first 4 big expeditions were total failures. And then the 5th one, which was to go follow a shaman, an Inuit shaman's journey from Ellesmere Island to Greenland with my wife, Chris Seashore. He was a madman, a shaman, a visionary adventurer, and to follow his journey, and that was successful. I felt that I began to tap in to that power. And I keep coming back to power because that to me is an important aspect of what we're doing out here, is finding that power. And so when I tapped into his power and tried to visualize how he was traveling, I was able to turn my multiple failures into being able to actually complete the journey. My next really big journey was to paddle a sea kayak over a course of 2 years from Japan to Alaska. And this theme of following visionary Paleolithic aboriginal travelers was repeated because I was following the journey of aboriginal people from Asia to North America. Some of the anthropology in that book is wrong. That book was in the wake of the Joman. That trip was rated by Paddler magazine as one of the top 10 sea kayak expeditions of all times. And some DNA evidence has disproven some of the exact anthropology of that book. But the core of the book to me is to say, why did people leave their homes in the temperate forest with salmon in the rivers and deer in the forests and temperate zones and travel into the high Arctic with Stone Age tools? And was it a pragmatic thing? They were escaping enemies or searching for more food, more abundant food. They were running away from famine. Or was there a spirit of adventure? Again, we're back to the power. Were people seeking some sort of power? And I use an example in that book where we had a gray whale come up to us when we were in our kayak. And these are big animals, really big animals, bigger than the kayak. And it came right up within a paddle length of the kayak and rolled over, and so its eye was up there and it was looking straight at me. And I said hi to the whale, and the whale said hi to me, and then the whale swam away, and the whales surrounded us for much of the day. And gray whales feed only in shallow water. And the local people, who are obviously observant of the animals, know that they feed in shallow water. They know that the cows travel north in the late fall, and they come back in the spring with new calves. So they had to think that there must be an ice-free zone up there where these whales were able to survive, because they couldn't feed when the ocean freezes over in shallow water. And either there was an arc that the land moved north and then south, or there was some magical ice-free zone up there. And I postulated that there was somebody who the whale became their totem animal, and they wanted to follow them to this ice-free nirvana. And of course, all the anthropologists jumped down my back. They said, this is horrible, this is terrible. Well, I didn't say this exactly is what happened. I said it's something like this. People out there seeking power. And I was told, no, you can't, people aren't that way. And I went, oh, well, whatever, people are that way. And then in this journey, we're paddling along the coast, pedal, and this storm comes up. And it's raining, and the wind is blowing, and the rain is falling, and the wind is picking up the waves and blowing it into the rain, and the wind is picking the rain up and blowing it into the waves, and it's mayhem out there, and we're in our sea kayaks, you see. And there's this village over there, and we say, we better go in. It's nasty out here, and there's houses over there. They'll put us up. So we paddle in through the surf, and we land on the beach, and this woman comes up to us and says, John, Misha, it's good to see you. The grandmother created this storm to bring you to our village. She wants to talk to you. So, what did I think? I'm a white man. I'm a chemist. I grew up in suburban Connecticut. But there's a storm out there. There's a warm house in there. I'm not in a position to be cynical. I'm not in a position to pass judgment. I said, wonderful. It'd be great to see the grandmother. And that ended up taking up the next 5 years of my life. Seeing the grandmother, it wasn't that simple. It didn't happen quickly. And I spent a lot of time with Misha in that village. And that was my third book or fourth book, I'm losing track now, The Raven's Gift. And she talked a lot about power. Power, where the power comes from, where the magic comes from. And these are loose words, magic, power, they're loose words, but where you draw the strength as a human being. So, okay, now we've gone through a bunch of years, and now I'm 65, and I spent all this time thinking about power, and I said, if I believe what I'm thinking, and I wrote a book about this called The Raven's Gift, if I believe what I'm thinking and I believe what I'm writing, even though I'm 65, I can do the biggest expedition of my life. And so I did the Ellesmere circumnavigation, which won us the award, me and Eric Boomer, my partner. I was 65, he was 27. And it won us the award of National Geographic among the top 10 adventures of the year in 2012. I wrote a book about that called Crocodiles and Ice. So now I'm in my 70s. I'm in Samburu in northeastern Kenya near the Olduvai Gorge where humanity evolved, and we're ready for the new book.
I'm sitting here with an old friend and mentor for me. His name is Jon Turk. He has written 5 adventure travel memoirs, and we are talking right now about his most recent one, which came out just last week, Tracking Lions, Myth, and Wilderness in Samburu. Jon, let's dive right in to the book.
I was invited to Samburu on a lion study. On my third day there, a local lion ate a local cow, one of the villagers' cows. And these are poor people. A cow is a significant, valuable asset. And when the cow gets eaten, this is not good. So I was asked to go track this lion with the village headman, Deepa. Well, before we take off, one of the one of the young Samburu men in camp said, you're going to be tracking this lion, you need to be armed. You need to have some kind of defense. And I said, yeah, that'd be a good idea. And so he hands me a wooden club. And I pick it up and I kind of look at it like, duh. And he looks at me and he says, you're a white man. Do you know how to neutralize a charging lion with a rungu, which is the Samburu name for a wooden club? And I go, no, you're right. I'm a white man. I was born in suburban Connecticut. My mother never taught me how to stop a charging lion with a wooden club. And he said, right, I figured that. You would probably think, being a white man, that you would hit it on the head, right? And, now I'm feeling really dumb. So I say, yeah, right, I would probably think that. He said, no, if you do that, the lion will eat you. I said, okay, how do you do it? And he leaps up with the speed and agility of an NFL running back, and he spins in the air, and he spins out of this imaginary lion's way and swings his club using his whole body. And he indicates what you have to do is jump, spin out of the way, and hit it on the side of the head and break its neck, and everything will be okay. So I think this is pretty funny. It doesn't quite sink in what's going on. But I meet up with Deepa, and we go off tracking this lion. Now, there's another thing that comes to my mind is, if we find this lion, what are we going to do? What's our mission? Somehow, because I'm working with the Lion Conservation Fund, I realize we don't want to kill this lion. So somehow it seems to me we are there to tell the lion it's being a bad lion and it shouldn't eat any more Samburu cows. But that's not clear to me how we're going to do that. Have you ever tried to train a house cat not to eat sparrows, So anyway, we're off walking along and we find the tracks and it's quite fresh, and the lion has eaten a cow, and then it killed a warthog, and the warthog is still warm. We're really close to the lion. And all of a sudden, I get angry. I get angry at the people who have sent me out here so ill-prepared. And Deepa has no weaponry at all. He doesn't even have a club. And then that anger lasts for a few nanoseconds or a few seconds, and I immediately realize when you're out in the wilderness and something happens that goes against you, anger is not your friend at all. Get rid of it, clean it, goodbye, and replace that with awareness, compassion, love, communication. This lion is a sentient, conscious mammal. I have to communicate with this lion. I have to be aware of the lion. I have to be aware of everything. I have to open my whole heart and soul to this savannah. And this is the beginning of the book, because what I ask, now I jump back. I'm near the Olduvai Gorge where humanity evolved. And I'm in a Paleolithic situation. I'm tracking a lion with a wooden club. This is wonderful. How did humanity survive? And then I start looking into the anthropology and get into this, what we talked about earlier, that it was storytelling, it was mythology, it was art, it was music, it was cooperation, it was love that gave us the power to survive. And tools came necessary. I know we're a tool-using species, but that came later. Okay, so now we go through blah, 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 a whole lot of mumbo-jumbo, all kinds of things happen. And then we get into this situation where I am not the tracker, but I am being tracked, that there are bad people out there with guns that want to kill us. And all of a sudden, now we're not armed with rungus anymore because we're not facing the lion, which presumably is a sane, sentient, compassionate creature. We're facing other people. And these people have guns. And now we have guns. Later on in the book, I am now tracking a lion, except we're not tracking a lion. We're running a defense perimeter around the village, and we're carrying automatic weapons. So I ask, how did this love, compassion, music, art, dance, tribalism, togetherness, how did all the beauty of humanity get morphed into the fact that these people might want to kidnap me, cut off my head, and post a video of it up on Facebook. And this is very real. Originally, I wanted to title the book Mythologies We Love and Kill For, but nobody liked that title. But I still like the title. But anyway, the question is, what gave us our power, and how did our power get stolen? How did it get hijacked? And in a nutshell, that's what the book is about.
That is the voice of Jon Turk. You're on the Trail Less Traveled. Jon and I are sitting here in the forest talking about his most recent 5th adventure travel memoir, Tracking Lions, Myth, and Wilderness in Samburu. Jon, I'd like to go back to that moment where you were tracking with a Samburu, holding a wooden club. The warthog carcass was warm, it was dark, and you were able to watch the anger pass by, maybe like a passing cloud, and come back to the moment where you realized anger wasn't going to serve you in that situation. What happened next?
Well, in my mind or in reality, in the physical situation, we kept tracking the lion, and then at one point, Deepa, the headman, the man I was with, stopped and said, "We go home now." And I look, and it wasn't a question. It wasn't something that was being discussed. He was the headman. He was the chief. I was following, and I went, "Okay, we go home now." And we never saw the lion. It was an adventure without the adventure part, and that we never did face the lion. And I never knew why we decided to go home. Did he have an appointment in town that he had to do? Did he communicate with the lion in some aboriginal deep way and decide we've completed our journey? I don't know what happened. And we went home. But in my mind, I had once again, nature had once again shown me the path. And as a lifelong adventurer, I've been in many situations where things are going wrong, where the situation has become potentially hazardous. So you're in the Nares Strait on the northeast coast of Ellesmere Island, near Greenland, 80 degrees north, 10 degrees from the North Pole, and the ice is moving in and you're trapped. So the temptation is maybe not anger, but frustration, or darn, couldn't nature be a little more nice to me because I'm special? You know, that sort of feeling. And that sort of feeling, of course, is ridiculous. And it's like the anger. It's like a disappointment with the now. I'm not happy with the now because it didn't fit my wondrous definition of how the now should treat me, which is, of course, totally ridiculous. And when we were in the Nares Strait, we were trapped for 17 days, big ice movement, ice, powerful, way more powerful than we are. And my friend, one of my friends, who's a extreme adventurer, texts me, he says, "Don't do anything stupid." So I text back, "Great. It would be stupid to stay here and wait till winter comes on and freeze to death, and stupid to go out into the ice and get crushed to death. What do I want to do?" And he writes back, he texts back, "If you think this is a barrier, if you think this is a problem, you are not strong enough to overcome it. You have to assume that the problem doesn't exist, that it's not this cosmos coming at you to make your life unpleasant, that there is no problem, man." And tracking the lion or being caught in the ice, you realize you're in this power that is not adversarial but wonderful. You can feel this power of nature, and it will give you power. And before you tell me that I'm a Pollyanna and this and that, I'll tell you something. Accepting that power means accepting, yeah, I might die out here. And saying that's okay. And when that's okay, and when the power of nature is something like, I can feel this power, I can be part of this power, I can be part of the wonder of nature, and that won't detract from me, that will strengthen me. And yeah, I might die out there. Yeah, okay, well, whatever. That's one of the options. And once you reach that point, then everything becomes just wonderful. Then it's just what's happening.
Jon, your most recent book, Tracking Lions, Myth, and Wilderness in Samburu. I was wondering if you could tell us some of the lessons that you learned from your time with the Samburu tribe.
Yeah, these people were very poor in the sense of North American wealth. They live in small huts. At a wedding, when a couple is married, the wedding party, mostly the women, make the new house for the new couple that afternoon. There is no construction crew. There is no 20-year mortgage. By the end of the afternoon, the couple have a house that they will live in. So one of the lessons you learn from the Samburu is that our conveniences, our wonderful luxuries are often an anchor on our freedom. And it's a balance. I live in Montana in the winter. My house is more substantial than a stick house that I could build in one day. But the concept that our possessions are also our anchors and our possessions take away from our freedoms is very, very real. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is, I do believe that people who have lived close to the landscape, close to the earth, have a much greater feeling that they are not the kings of the universe, that life goes on. We tend to think, because we have bulldozers and cars and all kinds of things and big houses, we tend to think, whether subliminally, that we're the masters of the universe and we run the show, which of course is just wrong. So you live with these people and there's a real sense deep of being in the moment. And one day we went off actually to a game park to view some animals that we hadn't seen out on the savannah. Me and Deepa and the head of the camp, a woman named Tina. And we came back, one of the men in camp said, "Did you see a giraffe today?" And I said, "No, we did not see giraffes today." And he looked at me very seriously and he said, "In Samburu, we learn not to be upset if you didn't see a giraffe today." And it's just kind of like, okay, man, I get it. And now that I live in Montana and there are no giraffes anywhere around, if something is bothering me and I feel myself getting aggravated or upset or losing my equanimity, I say, here in Darby, Montana, we learn not to be upset if you didn't see a giraffe today, not to expect the universe to do what you want it to do. And I guess the third thing is tribal love and compassion. And just, man, these people have lived through some horrible things. They've been attacked in genocidal attacks. One of the young men, Taipi, who I spent a lot of time with, he taught me how to do donuts in the sand on his Honda 90. He was into doing really good donuts. And a wonderful kid. And he had been involved in a genocidal attack on his village where his people had been murdered in front of him. And you learn that despite the poverty and despite the horrible things that have happened, to look at life with as much good spirit and love as you can. And that is an important lesson to learn.
It was while we were living internationally, about 11 years ago, that Explorer Maps first started, when Chris and his brother Greg decided to join forces and bring the maps to the whole wide world. Hi, this is Vanessa, Chris's wife. Each map is a labour of love, and I am lucky enough to see them all grow step by step from the early research and planning stages onto a large white piece of paper, through penciling, inking, and finally seeing the real magic happen as Chris adds the colour. As each one reaches the end phase, I get to examine them closely in the hope that I spot any unfinished bits before Chris sends them off. But there's always new illustrations to see every time. I love going to the Missoula warehouse when we're in Montana to see each unique map on the incredible range of products that Explorer Maps now has. Having lived away from home and families for the past 17 years, our aim of connecting people and place is very poignant to me. And for that reason, my favourite maps are Flathead and the Maasai Mara, because these two places are central to our extended family gatherings and where we have made the best of memories. Which map will you get to help you treasure your own special times? Please be sure to use the promo code Mandela for a discount when you visit explorermaps.com.
Now, Jon, as part of this book, you researched how storytelling brought us together and how we've started to move away from that. And I'd like to know how climate change is interwoven within that story.
Yeah, what happened is that when people moved out of their tribal hunter-gatherer world into cities and there became large concentrations of people, we ended up with rulers. The rulers became very good storytellers. The greatest despots, the most horrible people in the world, are really good storytellers because they can gather us together in our DNA-embedded propensity to like stories. And these are called mass movements. And what's happened is that the corporations have become very much like the despots. They tell us stories, and we believe. Join the Pepsi generation and you will have wonderful women or men chasing after you, and you'll have sex and money and everything. So we have become addicted to the corporate stories, which means we've become addicted to consumerism, which means we destroy the planet.
Wow, that was under 1 minute, and you really summed it up well, Jon. I appreciate it. I've always enjoyed speaking with you.
Thank you.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Olduvai Gorge, what's known by many anthropologists as the cradle of mankind.
Yeah, this is where humanity evolved. There were many species of primates who were Homo or were our direct ancestors, but Homo sapiens evolved in this part of the world. The important thing to understand is that, first of all, that there was many different subspecies of human-like primates. There was Neanderthals and Homo erectus and many different species. The other thing to understand is that when Homo sapiens evolved, there was climate change going on then. That was natural climate change. And we weren't doing very well. And the human race was almost going extinct. we were down to 2,000 individuals. We were on the endangered species list. And then the important thing, as we've been talking about throughout this talk, is that it was our innate music, art, storytelling, companionship, love, cooperation that gave us our power. But my science teacher, we've talked about this, said it was our thumb counterposed against our 4 digits that gave us our tool-wielding ability, which gave us our power. But even as a 4th grader, I thought, well, all the monkeys have thumbs counterposed against 4 fingers. Why didn't they rise to the same kind of ascendancy that humans arose to? You see, a big brain, we evolved a big brain early on. And this is an experiment that has only been tried once in evolution. And a big brain is an expensive metabolic organ. We need to eat more food to supply the energy to that big brain to keep it going. It takes 5 times more energy to keep a brain running than to keep a muscle running. So if we were going to put that evolutionary energy, you gotta hunt more food, find more food, get more food, put it into the body to keep the brain going. That brain has to return the investment in that generation. You can't have a big brain 3 million years ago so you could build rocket ships in 1995 or something like that. It has to have that benefit in that generation. And that benefit it's so wonderful to think that it's our art, it's our music, it's our dance that creates our power, not our bulldozers and our rocket ships and our iPads. That's the extra. That's the fluff on the top. And what does that mean to us today, to you and me, here we are in the 21st century? It means that, yeah, we have nice houses and we have iPads and, yeah, I fly around on airplanes and I have a car and all that kind of stuff. But that's peripheral. That's the icing on the cake. The meat and the potatoes is how we love each other, is how we dance, it's how we create art. It's how we create joy in the world. And then once we do that, I talked earlier about the consciousness revolution. The consciousness revolution is that, yeah, it's fine to have all this nice stuff, but it's not necessary, you see. We don't have to get hung up about it. And if we realize that all this foo-foo stuff on the top is not necessary, the consciousness revolution is to understand where our power comes from, to go after the power and not the stuff. And if we can take this consciousness revolution, and we don't have to sacrifice. I don't have to say, oh, I wish I had a big house, but I'm going to be an environmentalist, so I have a small house. No, that is not going to work. That hasn't worked. That won't work. We have to have the consciousness revolution that I put my energy into freedom, into love, into art, into storytelling, into friendships. And then the rest is so unimportant that if I have less, I don't even notice the difference.
That is the voice of Jon Turk. He is the author of multiple adventure travel memoirs. He just released his 5th, titled Tracking Lions, Myth and Wilderness in Samburu. Jon is also the author of 38 various science textbooks. He wrote the first environmental science textbook in North America in response to Earth Day 1 in 1970. If someone were to want to read your newest adventure travel memoir, Tracking Lions, Myth and Wilderness in Samburu, what's the best way to find it?
The best way to find it is go to your local independent bookstore and buy it from them. It's available anywhere in the U.S. or Canada, at any bookstore. If they don't have it in stock, they can order it. You can send me an email at john@jonturk.net, or please go on to my website at www.jonturk.net. Check it out. Look at the pictures and all of that. You can order it directly from me through my website, or you can also boohoo go to all those online bookstores. It's available anywhere where books are sold.
Namaste, Missoula. Mandela here, your host of The Trail Less Traveled, the Trail 103.3's locally harvested adventure radio series that premieres every Sunday evening from 6 to 7 Mountain Time. You can stream the show live online by visiting trail1033.com. If you missed the premiere, remember the show is also a podcast, available on all platforms. You can view the full show archive and learn more about our outreach programs by visiting traillesstraveled.net. Well, I am standing in my backyard here in Missoula looking at a beautiful black bear and 2 cubs up in a tree about 100 feet above. And my adventure tip this week is to remember, when you're heading out the door, either make a plan to make lots of sound or carry bear spray, or both, so that you don't spook a bear. I'd like to end the show this evening by extending gratitude to a small family business based in Missoula with roots in Africa. Explorer Maps is connecting people and place through hand-drawn story maps. The Trail Less Traveled has partnered with Explorer Maps in order to bring cartography alive. Visit explorermaps.com to learn about upcoming events, such as junior cartographer classes and our free community storytelling events, such as Cartography Comes Alive. This Thursday, June 12th, we're hosting Ramona Holt, and the audience can expect to journey through the rich history of 20th century pioneering here in Montana. That's it for this week's adventure, my friends in Missoula and around the world. But until next week, please remember, living in Missoula is a privilege. With privilege comes responsibility. Please get informed, get engaged, and speak up on behalf of wildlife and wild places.